Thank you for coming to this navigation. Number one. This is cursor zero. The dictionary to be treated this time is Richard Thornton's American Glossary, 1912, and the title Thornton's American Glossary Reconsidered, which is based on the presentation at UC. Section 1, Introduction. It is generally agreed among the authorities of American lexicography that the most useful dictionaries of Americanisms are W. A. Craigie and J. Harvard's Dictionary of American English on Historical Principles and M. N. Matthews' Dictionary of Americanisms on Historical Principles. Matthews' Dictionary hereafter. Both of the two dictionaries, published in the middle of the 20th century, were compiled by the related teams of specialists, respectively, like many other modern English dictionaries. However, from a historical viewpoint, the interest in collecting Americanisms had already begun among lexicographers at the beginning of the 19th century, and each of them had engaged in the task of compiling the dictionaries of the words and expressions by his own effort. J. W. Smith and M. M. Bryant depicted the history of the dictionaries of Americanisms from the beginning of the 19th century and that of the 20th. According to them, the first dictionary of Americanisms is J. Pickering's vocabulary, a collection of words and phrases which have been supposed to be peculiar to the United States of America. It was published in 1816, 10 years before the renowned Noah Webster's American Dictionary of the English Language, 1828. Concerning Pickering's dictionary, Smith critically remarked that the entry words listed in it are actually not peculiar to the United States. The second dictionary of Americanisms is, according to Smith and Bryant, was published approximately 30 years after Pickering's. It is J. Bartlett's Dictionary of Americanisms, 1848. Bryant commented on the dictionary that it showed that Pickering's attitude had now been replaced by an interest in dialect for its own sake. In 1889, J. S. Palmer published the book Americanism Old and New as the third dictionary of Americanism. Then, probably as the fourth and epoch-making dictionary, R. H. Thornton's American Glossary was issued in 1912. This dictionary is featured by an abundance of citations, specifically approximate 14,000 citations, and which are all arranged in historical principles. This can be regarded as marvelous when the fact is taken into account that the dictionary is Thornton's single-handed work. Quite differently from the previous three dictionaries before it, the American Glossary provided with this feature seemed to have been an indispensable reference book for Craigie and Harvard in compiling the dictionary. In the preface to the dictionary, Craigie stated that to Thornton, in particular, the dictionary, Craigie's dictionary, is frequently indebted for its earliest instances, as well as the illustrations of many colloquialisms and rare uses. This statement by Craigie should not be interpreted that he merely referred to Thornton's record of old Americanism. Actually, it may not be exaggerating to say that the American Glossary even laid the foundation for the scientific study of Americanism. This point will be expounded in the following section. but it may be worth citing the following passage here, which shows on what definition Thornton based in collecting Americanisms for the compilation of the dictionary. There are 6 points. The notion of Americanism, which is revealed in this definition, will be regarded as highly sophisticated at the beginning of the 20th century. Strangely, however, as far as I can judge, Thornton and his American Glossary have hardly been studied in detail until today. Furthermore, the dictionary even seems to be on the verge of being lost in oblivion among the authorities of American lexicography. For instance, A.J. Atkin seems to have had the recognition that the history of the Dictionary of Americanisms began with Craigie's dictionary. In the concrete, Atkin made such remarks as the idea of making a historical dictionary of the English of the United States came to Craigie when he was reading OED proofs during a visit to Chicago, and did not refer to Craigie's interest in Thornton's American Glossary. The same situation can be seen in S. I. Landau's remarks on the Dictionary of Americanisms. In the Oxford Companion to the English language, the entries for the explanation of Craigie's and Matthews's dictionaries are provided, but that for Thornton's is not. Even in J. Argell's article, The American Lexicography, in the Burger Dictionaries, Dictionnaire, an interpretation encyclopedia of lexicography, the magnificent reference work at the end of the 20th century, the American Glossary is not referred to. Truly, it is Craigie's and Matthews's dictionaries which are easily available to us nowadays. Besides, it is also true that Craigie tried to apply the historical principle of the OED to his dictionary. However, these facts will not necessarily affect the historical significance of Thornton's American Glossary. R.R.K. Hartman once stated thus: most dictionaries have forerunners and all have imitators. As already mentioned, Craigie clarified that the American Glossary was one of his indispensable reference books in compiling his dictionary. Based on this recognition, I will, in this article, give an account of Thornton and his American Glossary that have often been passed over among the authorities, thus aiming to clarify the origin of scientific study of Americanisms in the field of lexicography. Section 2. Overview of the American Glossary. Thornton's American Glossary was issued in 2 versions. It is not necessarily appropriate to regard them as 2 editions. The one was issued in 2 volumes in 1912 while he was alive, and the other in 3 volumes in 1962 after his death. The 3rd volume of the 1962 version being a supplement to the 1912 version. I will use the 1st and 2nd volumes of the 1962 version in my analysis, but the introductory materials, with the exclusion of Bryant's introduction, and the body of them can be regarded as the same with those of the 1912 version. Then, the title page of the American Glossary is the following, as you see. The phrase being an attempt to illustrate certain Americanisms upon historical principles here suggests that the historical principles of the OED inspired Thornton to compile the American Glossary, In this sense also, he will be safely regarded as Craigie's forerunner. Its title page being provided thus, the first volume of the American Glossary is composed of Thornton's To the Reader, Jane Norden's poem entitled The Author to his book, Bryant's Introduction and the Body. Among the introductory materials of them, Thornton's To the Reader, which details his definition of Americanisms, and Bryant's Introduction, which gives an account of the history of the study of such words, can be regarded as having their own values. The structure of the American Glossary having been seen at above, it will provide a starting point for the analysis of the dictionary to see the history of Thornton's life in brief. Thornton was originally not an American, but an Englishman who was born in Lancashire in 1845. However, his life is not treated in the Dictionary of National Biography. For the purpose to know it, we are obliged to depend on the brief description by R.I. McDavid Jr., which is the following. It is as you see. Please read. Okay? It is not exactly known when Thornton started compiling his American Glossary in this history of his life. We can only estimate that it was sometime before 1907 because, according to H.R. Mencken, in that year, Thornton was in London pursuing inquiries toward it, the dictionary. In any way, the first version of the American Glossary was issued in 1912. However, this did not mean that Thornton's task of collecting and analyzing Americanisms was finalized then. He vigorously continued the task after 1912, and the effort for the task posthumously bore fruit in the form of the third volume of the 1962 version of the American Glossary, as I mentioned earlier. Before it became obscured by Craigie's dictionary, the American Glossary was highly estimated in general. For instance, G.P. Krupp, an authority of the English language in America, praised the dictionary, remarking that it makes no pretense to be. It does supply a sound method by which later students of the subject, the study of Americanisms, must profit it. However, as I have mentioned, the dictionary has rarely been referred to since Craigie's dictionary was published. Matthew's dictionary also overshadowing it. In the field of the historical study of the English language, there are still some authorities who acknowledge the value of the American Glossary. A.C. Poe is an instance. He remarked that the most valuable contribution to the subject, the collection of Americanisms, is R.A. Thornton's An American Glossary. Such remarks taken into account, it seems to be ironical that few authorities of American lexicography nowadays mention the same dictionary, even though this situation may have been caused by the general emphasis on the practical utility of dictionaries. Section 3. 8 features of the American Glossary. When the American Glossary browsed through Thornton's splendid view of Americanisms and his lexicographical technique in treating them can be grasped in the concrete. However little the dictionary is known among the current authorities, it seems that there are at least 8 features about the dictionary which must have benefited the lexicographers of Americanisms after Thornton, such as Craigie and Matthews. In this section, I will point out each of the 8 features, citing 1 or 2 examples from entries on words for the letter L in the American Glossary. As to this sampling method, it was used by J. W. Reed Jr. and J. H. Friend when they investigated the tendencies of Webster's practice in his compilation of the dictionary, respectively. For details about the method, I have once discussed it in my thesis. 1. The entry words of the American Glossary seem to be defined in brief and to the point as you see. 2. Reference books and historical literature which are related to the entry words are often specified in detail as you see. 3. However, the American Glossary did not necessarily follow the descriptions in scholarly books and established opinions as you see. The following is an example in which Thornton posed his unique view of the entry word, which is as you see. This feature, as well as that shown in the 2, clarified Thornton's research capability, suggesting the fact that he did not merely concentrate on collecting Americanisms. 4. In tracing the history of entry words, the dictionary refers to the time before America became an independent nation, when the necessity arises, as you see. 5. People's likes and dislikes of entry words are occasionally referred to as you see. 6. Entries of obsolete words are included, which seems to suggest Thornton's scientific objectivity as you see. 7. Descriptive usage notes are given here and there as you see. 8. The sources of citations are minutely indicated. Within the range of entries on words for the letter L in the American Glossary, Thornton provided citations in all of the entries. Concerning each of the citations, he actually indicated on which page of what book it was found, in the case that its source was a book. Still more about the year of publication of the book. In addition, when the sources were periodicals and newspapers, Thornton specified which of the titles and body texts of them the relevant citations were taken from. Examples are as you see here. I have thus far pointed out 8 features of the American Glossary. According to Bryan, the 1912 version of the dictionary lists approximate 3,700 entries on Americanisms in all. When this number of the entries and the 8 features are taken into account, the historical significance of the dictionary should not be overlooked, even after Craigie's and Matthew's dictionaries. Indeed, an individual compiled this dictionary at the very beginning of the 20th century. Section 4, Sources of Citations. Section 4.1, Overview of the sources. Few authorities will be against the point that citations play a focal role in historical dictionaries. In this section, I will aim to grasp the general tendencies of Thornton's selection of sources of citations in terms of their geographical and chronological distribution. For this purpose, I would investigate citations in entries on Word for the letter L in the dictionary as I performed in the previous section. Specifically, I will examine 600 full citations provided in 126 entries within this range. From a novel viewpoint, citations in the American Glossary can be divided into two types. As I also mentioned in the previous section, the one is periodicals and newspapers, and the other is books. As to the former, they are indicated in italics as NY Evening Post, and as to the latter, they are in block letters in single quotes as a stray Yankee in Texas. The books which were used as the sources of citations include those of literary works. In this situation, when the 600 full citations are analyzed, it becomes revealed that Thornton provided 306 citations from 78 periodicals and newspapers and 298 citations from 123 authors of books. It may well be said that this fact indicates that the American Glossary includes citations from extensive range of sources for the dictionary at the beginning of the 20th century. At the same time, the fact also implies that the citations are provided in a balanced manner without this disproportionate weight on particular fields. Section 4.2 Geographical distribution. In many cases, regional names as well as sources are attached to citations in American Glossary. Concerning this, Bryan remarked that he, Thornton, aided in determining the local origin of particular usages, which I agree with. Some examples are as you see here. However, Bryan did not provide any further information about the point, and it seems that the geographical distribution of citations in the American Glossary has not been known until today. Here, I will try to clarify part of the aspect by examining citations from the Congressional Globe. According to Bryan, citations from the source represented the speakers from all parts of the country and discussed a variety of subjects, each using the language familiar to him, Thornton. Within the range of the L's, Thornton provided 49 citations from the Congressional Globe, which account for 8.1% of all citations or 16.0% of citations from newspapers and periodicals. In terms of the nature of the source and the frequency of it being quoted from, the examination of the citations from the Congressional Globe will be regarded as appropriate for the current purpose. Then, what the 62 citations from the Congressional Globe are recognized by the regional names attached to them, are categorized by the regional names attached to them, the following list becomes obtained, the figures indicating the number of citations for each. It is as you see. From a broader perspective, this list can be modified as the following as you see. The two lists above seem to indicate that Thornton placed an emphasis on citations taken from phrases and sentences which had been used in Northeast. This is probably the result of the political climate at Thornton's time, but his interest in the dialect there may also have been related to the fact. Section 4.3 Chronological distribution. As I mentioned at the beginning of the section, how citations are provided will be regarded as one of the most important purposes of historical dictionaries. If this is the case, its core aspect will lie in the chronological distribution of the citations. According to my analysis, within the range of the L's, citations in the American Glossary are taken from the literature published between 1454 and 1910. The fact that the upper limit of the period is 1454 is part of the dictionary being of Americanisms can be regarded as proof of how wide Thornton's historical perspective was in collecting citations. As to the lower limit of the period 1910, the fact is taken into account that Thornton was 17 years old then. It implies how enthusiastically he was comparing the dictionary. From a historical viewpoint, then, what type of the language did he aim to treat in his dictionary in particular? When citations in the American Dictionary are categorized by the years of publication of their sources, a unique tendency becomes clarified. That is, within the range of the L's in the dictionary, the usage of the language in the period between 1454 and the 1750s is illustrated with comparatively few citations. Specifically, the number of citations provided for the purpose is no more than 23 in number, accounting for 3.8% of all citations within the range. By contrast, as to the usage of the language in the period between the 1800s and the 1850s, it gradually becomes heavily illustrated with the course of time. Then the period after that becomes less illustrated again. In the concrete, this situation can be shown as the following. Here, the C signifies the number of citations which illustrate each decade. Okay. It should be noted that this list shows that Thornton provided 344 citations from the literature published in 40 years between the 1830s and the 1860s within the range of the L's, where he treated the literature published in 460 years. Actually, the 344 citations account for 57.0% of all citations within the range. In particular, out of the 344 citations, 110 citations are taken from the literature in the 1850s, which comprised 18.2% of all citations. It can well be said that this is quite notable, but what was the reason which caused the situation? The structure of the entry in the American Glossary is usually composed of its related entry word, its definition and explanation, and the sequence of citations provided in chronological order. According to my analysis, out of the 344 citations from the literature published between the 1830s and the 1860s, only 56 are used for the purpose of recording the first use of entry words. As to the citations taken from the 1850s, out of related 110 citations, no more than 12 are used for the same purpose. This means that remaining 288 citations out of the 344 citations from the period have no relevance to recording the first use of entry words, but again, it caused Thornton to provide such citations so frequently in his dictionary. Here, American history brought the truth. It becomes found that the period between the 1830s and the 1860s was that of what is termed as the American Renaissance in the history of American literature, when prominent figures of literature such as Ralph Waldo Emerson, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Henry David Thoreau, Herman Melville, and Walt Whitman energetically wrote their works, thus influencing the language in America. This fact may suggest the possibility that Thornton was especially concerned with the change in the language which may have been caused by the American Renaissance. Though, to the best of my judgment, Thornton did not refer to it anywhere, as well as to the reason why he frequently provided citations from the literature between the 1830s and 1860s. Section 5. Comparison with Craigie's Dictionary. The American Glossary manifestly laid the foundation of the scientific study of Americanism, Thornton being the forerunner of the lexicographers of the words and expressions. As partly mentioned at the beginning of this article, Craigie was generous with compliments to the American Glossary. He also remarked the following, as you see. Then, referring to the point that the American Glossary was a valuable reference book which almost equaled the OED, Craigie continued. He says, as you see. In conjunction with this, it may be worth pointing out in passing that Bryant remarked the following, though it seems that how much of the statement is true had not been clarified yet. As a natural consequence of the compilation by a team of experts, the quantity of information in Craigie's dictionary is voluminous as compared with that in the American Glossary. However, this does not mean that Craigie's dictionary contained all information in the American Glossary. When the entries on words for the letter L in the American Glossary are compared with those in Craigie's dictionary, it becomes clear that the number of citations included in both dictionaries is no more than 53, accounting for 8.8% of all citations within the range in the American Glossary. That is, the American Glossary contains 551 citations concerning entries on words for the letter L which are not provided in Craigie's dictionary. This means that the American Glossary still retained its usefulness even after the publication of Craigie's dictionary. From another viewpoint, as to the 53 citations which are seen in both dictionaries, 29 out of them are provided in the American Glossary for the purpose of recording the first use of their relevant entry words. And out of the 29 citations, 19 are also provided in Craigie's dictionary for the same purpose. This will be safely regarded as providing a high academic standard of the American Glossary. Apart from the point of citations, Craigie occasionally disregarded entries in the American Glossary in the compilation process of his dictionary. Specifically, this concerned the 33 entries as you see. Concerning definitions of Americanism, it seems that there are differences between Thornton's and Craigie's. However, in spite of the differences, or rather because of the differences, it seems that even nowadays the American Glossary becomes necessary in the study of the words and phrases. Section 6. Conclusion. The English dictionary often reflects the situation of the study of the language when it is published. Concerning the study of Americanism, the interest in it began at the beginning of the 19th century, and this resulted in Pickering's vocabulary, a collection of words and phrases in 1816. Then the dictionary was followed by Bartlett's Dictionary of Americanism and Palmer's Americanism, Old and New, in 1816 and 1889, respectively. However, these dictionaries only treated approximately 500 Americanisms at best and can hardly be regarded as based on scientific objectivity. Differently from them, Thornton's American Glossary, compiled based on historical principles like the case of the OED, was the first dictionary of Americanism, which is worthy of being called a product of scientific research. Furthermore, without the American Glossary, Craigie's dictionary, as well as Matthew's, might not have been compiled as they actually were. In addition, there is even the possibility that the supplement to the OED might have passed over its necessary information if it had not been compiled with reference to the American Glossary. In these senses, the American Glossary may well be regarded as the dictionary which marked the beginning of the scientific study of Americanisms in the field of lexicography. This is the bibliography. This is the second page of bibliography. Thank you for joining me. If you find the topic this time interesting, it is expounded in detail in my paper below at UC.